everybody. Welcome and thanks for joining us on our third online workshop, AML Requirements. Joining the discussion on the compliance experts team is myself, Kyle Oden, Dobby. Hello. Good morning. Mitchell Suda. Good morning, everyone. We'll be sharing some of our personal experiences today in regards to anti-money laundering. Well, let's hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving and is making some nice plans for the holidays here as the year comes to a close. As always, one of the reasons that we like to host these free workshops is really just to continue to be an educational resource for all the MSBs out there. Some of the guidelines for today's workshop, we wanted to make this final workshop in this short and sweet for everybody, so we're going to try to keep it to 30 minutes or less. We will, however, like usual, leave some time at the end to answer any questions you guys may have. So regarding those questions, go ahead and type those questions into the chat box in the bottom right of your screen. Make send the questions only to the host. This is going to prevent any confusion amongst the group here. And we'll go ahead and answer as many as we can in the allotted time. And in the event that you don't think of a question during the workshop, feel free to reach out to us after the fact, and we'll go ahead and follow up with you as necessary. We definitely hope to answer any questions you have regarding our discussion today. And remember, you can always visit us for additional information at capitalcomplianceexperts.com. We'll go ahead and jump into the topic at hand. 4 pillars of an anti-money laundering program. Now, this is something you've probably heard repeatedly if you handle any compliance work related to your business. So we're going to, you've heard about the pillars, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail about each one of these pillars. Pillar number 1 is the designation of a compliance officer. It's probably the one that is the most easy to grasp and maybe the one that seems the most self-explanatory. It does go beyond simply just designating someone within your organization to be that compliance officer. Compliance officer holds responsibilities on a daily basis. They're responsible for actually knowing and understanding your AML policies of the money service business. For instance, the programs that Capital Compliance Experts write are completely custom to each business and range anywhere from 80 to 200 pages, just depending on the products and services that are offered within the organization. So that's a big responsibility alone, just to be able to know those products off the top of your head, for all the procedures that go along with operating that business. So you need to designate somebody that's capable of learning and understanding all the policies and procedures that are written for your organization. Are very good at what they do and will take as much time as needed to walk part of your compliance team through their programs. Compliance officers are also responsible for speaking intelligently to banks and the rest regarding the processes of their financial institutions. It's becoming more regular that banks want to speak directly to the compliance officers of a business rather than a consultant that was just hired to perform their review, train their employees or writing their policies. So it's important for the businesses to be able to actually speak to their processes intelligently. And internally, we call that language bankanese. The banks have very specific verbiages that they use and ways that they speak regarding compliance. And so part of our training process is to cover, how business owners and compliance officers should be able to speak to their programs. Additional items, daily checklists, training logs, transaction reports, making sure that managers at each store are checking off their transactions on a daily basis and making sure certain transactions, such as CRs and SARs, order and wire logs are filed when necessary. These are all items that are the responsibility of the designated compliance officer. No specific guideline as to who can be the compliance officer in your business. It can be an owner, it can be an employee, it can be a family member. You do want to choose this person wisely. because of the amount of responsibility that's held with that position. And, one thing to note based on our experience with banks is they conduct a background investigation on owners as well as compliance officers of a company due to the vital role they play within an organization. So it's important to designate somebody that will pass a background check with these. You don't have someone that doesn't have felonies or a criminal history. Banks can deny your bank account for something that's called a character decline. Keep in mind when you're assigning a compliance officer to your organization. As a recap, for pillar number 1, you want to designate a compliance officer that has a good background, knows your AML policies, and really understands your business processes and the services that you provide. And hand this off to Jerry to discuss number 2.
All right. Thanks for that information. Very, very informative. So thank you for that. So hello, good morning, everyone. I will be handling pillar number 2 today. And number 2 is the development of internal policies, procedures, and controls. Now, the development of internal policies, procedures, and controls are pretty much the meat of all the pillars. As a money service business, this second pillar addresses how you run the business, MSB stays in compliance, and how to ensure that all the policies and procedures written are being implemented and upheld. This pillar probably has the most variance amongst all pillars in the fact that not all MSBs operate the same. Each MSB may have different products, volumes, and customer base. It is important that the policies and procedures cater to how the MSB is being operated. From personal experience here, the one thing that we notice the most is MSBs out there who adopt an anti-money laundering program will not cover that additional activity. For example, if you are a money transmitter and money order seller, that anti-money laundering program provided to you by your agent provider will cover those activities. But if you do check cashing or currency exchange, those unfortunately most likely will not be covered from your agent's anti-money laundering program. And this is a common theme we see amongst a lot of MSBs. So we remind a lot of our clients that all the activities and all the type of procedures should be covered in there. So on that note, if you're doing any type of money service business activity, make sure your anti-money laundering program presents that second pillar of the development of internal policies, procedures, controls. And for the third pillar, and we have Mitchell.
And I know there's a lot of information here, guys, so I hope everyone's taking notes, and I hope we're slowly enough to open your rank speed. So third pillar is overlooked, ongoing and relevant training of employees. So one of the key points for training, and it's good definitely to resource, especially a company like ours, to do your training, just because there's a lot of topics that need covered. Our rule for training is it must be done upon initial employment, and then annually from there on out. So once a year, and any new employees within, there's no definitive time frame when someone, when the new employee basically, but its general rule of thumb is within a month they need to have AML training. You as a business, you need to have some sort of training logs and or reporting for all staff. Typically includes some sort of certificate that's time-stamped, things like that. Everyone needs to be trained on general criteria that qualifies, a suspicious activity report. I'm sure we've all heard the term SARS. And also, how to look for things like structuring, surfing, things like that. Everyone needs to be trained on the type of transactions that have specific record-keeping requirements, CTRs, money order logs, wire transfer logs, knowing exactly the criteria that requires you to file those things, those logs. Also, everyone needs to be trained on, proper customer identification and verification, as well as understanding and knowing customer confidentiality, typical rules. Each is definitely different. So you be trained on, not only the general guidelines of AML, but also your specific internal policies and procedures, specific to your locations. Sometimes there's a rule like, you can't, past 9 o'clock you can't cash a check over 3,000. Things like that are specific to your location, your manager, your owner, whatever. And obviously you need to be trained on all your services and software, both how to perform transactions, as well as how to report these SARs and SARs and CTRs. And lastly, this is the big one: is make sure that everyone who's been trained actually has learned something. And a lot of people, they take the training and they didn't learn anything. They just kind of went through the motions. It definitely comes into play in the real world. Whether it's your bank or the IRS or CFPB, you're going to be asked questions. You never can really predict when. So definitely that in mind. There's training.
Thank you, Joe. And moving to the next pillar, which is also the final pillar, is independent testing and review. The final pillar here ensures that everything mentioned in the previous pillars are operating in an acceptable manner. One of the main purposes of independent testing and reviewing is to find deficiencies. When deficiencies are found, recommendations can be made to alleviate any weaknesses the AML program may have. If there aren't any deficiencies found, at least have that peace of mind that your AML program is in tip-top shape. But let's be honest here, everyone. From our personal experience, when we look over AMLs, even if we look over AMLs we created from a year ago, most likely we will always find a deficiency. Because if you create an AML, that AML will be operating for 3 months, for 6 months, for 12 months, and with that time frame, your business may change. Your volumes may increase. You may add new products and services, or the opposite. You may get rid of some products and services, or your volumes may decrease. But it's always important to make sure that your anti-money laundering program is, and make sure that there aren't any deficiencies in there. And that is something definitely like what our company does. We see of MLs a month, and chances are we'll find deficiencies large and small. The good news is deficiencies, depending on who's auditing you, it's not so much of a bad thing or a good thing. When we find the deficiencies, we'll make those recommendations to correct those deficiencies, and overall giving you that peace of mind. So I hope these 4 pillars, this information about the 4 pillars is something new for everyone, something you guys learned. If something you already know, then, we're getting the job done, right? Everyone, we are a culture of compliance, and compliance is everybody's business. And close us out today. Let's go.
Cool. So let's check the chat box. So there's the 4 pillars just listed there. I'm going to chat box, see if there are any questions. I do have a list here of sort of generally asked questions. Obviously, AML programs is kind of our bread and butter, so we know exactly what people ask. So the first some of the questions I have here, it says, who is the best person to be a compliance officer?
That's a great question, and that is a question that is pretty much asked by every MSP. Every time we get a new client or a former client, or if there's employee turnover, they seem to always ask, who's the best person to be the compliance officer? It's the person who you trust the most. Sometimes it's yourself, and sometimes it's that best employee. But the one thing that is common, that compliance officer better know their stuff. In most cases, when an MSP gets audited, a bank, a FIN representative, a CFPB representative, they look for who the compliance officer is. So it is important to make sure that that compliance officer knows what they're talking about, knows their stuff, and most importantly, whatever is written on the anti-money laundering program in terms of monitoring and make sure that they're doing their job, that they are doing their job. Everyone here in this room right now, we had so many experiences where some desperation, a lot of clients will just write down a compliance officer just to fill out that blank space. And when audit time, they go to that compliance officer, and unfortunately that compliance officer is not to par with the bank needs, as what Kyle mentioned earlier. So, in short, the compliance officer can be anyone. It could be the owner, it could be yourself, it could be somebody who's there for day-to-day operations, but just that compliance officer is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they understand the policies and procedures.
Something I mentioned earlier is, it's always good to make sure that whoever you designate as a compliance officer does have a clean criminal history, because banks will investigate that. Yeah.
All right, so the next one looks like these are kind of related. Question we often hear is, I have multiple, so I do cashing, I do wire transfers, I do money, I do a bunch of different services. Do I have to have an AML program individually for all those different services, or just have one AML for?
What was that question, Mitchell?
So, basically, the question is, do I have one AML per service, or do I have just one to cover it all?
Okay, I got you. I just wanted to make sure that our audience heard that, because we get this question all the time. The general rule of thumb is it's just have an AML that covers everything instead of having a separate AML for each activity. Believe it or not, we have come across that situation where I mentioned earlier, we have a customer who's an agent of a money transmitter. They'll have an AML for that, and they'll have a separate AML for the cashing with a different compliance officer, different independent review schedule. And it's not that that's a bad thing, but it does add, more work to the client themselves. It's all just good to create one AML that will cover all the activity, or if you have an adopted AML, like an AML from us, and if you add activities there later, you can an addition or a supplement or an addendum to cover all those extras activity. It's always good to have, all your eggs in one basket when it comes to the activities, because it gives us the better snapshot of activities and procedures that covers all how the MSB is being operated. So that's a good question. We do hear that all the time.
So we're all aware, it's definitely in the past now to adopt, wire transfer AML program. I think we've all seen that, and banks are really cracking down on that. And let's see here. So, will my bank ask for an independent review? That question comes up a lot, actually.
It does. From our experience, how often a bank asks for an independent review? The general rule is a bank will ask you for an independent review at least annually. When they monitor your accounts, and if you see new activity in there, for example, if you're an agent of a money transmitter and you say you're only doing money transmission, a couple later they see some third-party checks in there, and they see money orders as well. Now, the bank will most likely ask for an independent review or have you go through another audit, because when they see new activity in there that they weren't aware of, they will make sure that you are in compliance for that. And another answer for this question is, often your bank will do the independent review. Sometimes you can call your bank and ask to be reviewed, which is really rare. But from our experience, a lot of customers who add additional activity later on, they'll let their bank know, Bank A, I just added money orders. Can you audit me, make sure I'm in compliance? I want to make sure I'm going to keep my account safe. And sometimes customers, every time they add a new activity within a month, within 3 months, 6 months, they'll actually call the bank for that. but mostly your bank will be monitoring your accounts anyway to catch any of that, because they are required to have you go through a review every time new activity is monitored or discovered, or on an annual basis.
Okay. I think that's up most of our questions. So I do want to make sure everyone's aware, obviously. There was a lot of information here, but we're more than happy to go over it after this meeting. If anyone, obviously everyone who's, I'm assuming, has an AML program, we do use on those, a quick 15, 20-minute review on those. So if you want to, feel free to give us a call. We can take your AML and just give you an honest opinion to make sure that all of these items are covered, and our honest feedback. We're happy to do that because ultimately we want everyone to be bankable and to have a healthy banking relationship. The other services, obviously, we do independent reviews, party independent reviews specifically. We're a nice team of CAM certified compliance officers that do this all day. And we do have a big extensive training program. I know I mentioned the items on training. We have an automated online training that kind of simplifies it. I've seen many people be successful in covering all of those items in their own kind of homegrown training. Some people have. It's pretty affordable just to go through training and do it that way. And again, we definitely appreciate everyone who attends. We're going to be having another series of ours, first quarter of this coming year. Definitely stay tuned. And give us a call. Any questions that you have, we love to speak to people, on a one-to-one basis and really kind of consult with you and give you feedback and give you any information we can. Really, we're this we do, and we're definitely passionate about it and are here in any way we can. So yeah, definitely check out for this next webinar, and feel free to reach out to us anytime, just to say hello. So, all right, with that, we'll wrap it up and talk to you. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.